All right, guys. So it's been a while since I've done a Black Clover What If. Hope you guys enjoy. Shimazaki, definitely one of the more underrated characters in Mob Psycho. His fight was sick though against like all the like Espers. It was like really peak. So you know what? I thought, what if I gave Asta Shimazaki's powers? Yeah. So I'm gonna tell y'all this right now. Most of my videos are always scripted, but with this one, Black Clover's story kind of leaves me aloof and I kind of forget things most of the time. So after the certain point of mark where things may become rushed or feel like they might be a little strange, just know that I kind of may or may not have stopped scripting at some point. But for the most part, the beginning will be scripted like usual. So yeah, just enjoy. I hope you guys like, and let's dive in right now. So we start this story off with Asta being much different than in the original timeline, with him being bored and much more focused and just less excited, almost like he was waiting for something, anything to pique his interest. Because at the end of the day, all this 6-year-old Asta wanted was to have fun. But the way that Asta meant it wasn't like a normal child. No, not like playing outside with other kids and stuff like that. No, that's not what Asta meant, not one bit, because he had gained memories and different events in his life already around the age of 4. So with that being said, Asta wanted to fight, and he wanted one that would pique his interest, because ever since Asta was around the age of 4, he knew he was different. He used powers that no one else could. He had abilities no one else can fathom. And along with these overpowered abilities that Asta would possess, he would have just been bored, to say the least, learning from a young age that there weren't many who could challenge him. One day, for example, when Asta was 5 years old, he went out to town in Hodge Village. There was a royal attacking a commoner for no reason. So Asta decided, having awakened his strange abilities a year earlier, and already trained them to near perfection, approached the royal holy knight, telling him to stop and that what he was doing was wrong, with a bored expression on his face. But it would be at this moment that the royal would turn around and attack Asta without a second thought, using water magic. Before it could get anywhere near Asta, he had already teleported behind him and taken the knight out with a precise blow to his neck, with a random man thanking him who that royal knight was, attacking, as Asta would teleport, leaving the man in shocked silence. As the years would go by, one day Father Orsi would tell both Yuno and Asta to go and deliver a package for him. And that's when a man would come out of nowhere and try to take Yuno's pendant, like in the main timeline of Asta. Defeating this man with zero difficulty, because, well, he has Esper powers and there's no way this dude stood a chance. They would make it back home and eat with the rest of the church. After tells Asta that his goal in life was to be the Wizard King and that he was going to stop working like a crybaby, of also telling that he has immense potential and that he believes that he could pull it off, of also thinking the Wizard King, hey, he might be able to bring me a little fun. Anyways, the day of the Grimoire ceremonies kick off with everyone going just like in canon. Would get his 4th leaf clover and declare he is going to be the Wizard King, while also beating up the royal losers who try to take his grimoire from him and sell it, As Yuno was about to leave, though, the chain mage Revchi, a foreign magic knight, appears and captures Yuno, telling him he's going to sell his grimoire. But this is when, out of nowhere, Revchi would feel a tap on his shoulder, and it would be none other than Asta, as he goes on to tell him that this isn't going to work out well for him if he continues with this. Revchi immediately sending tons of chains towards Asta, with him just teleporting out of the way. This is when Asta would speed blitz Revchi, to his shock, and with a telekinetic enhanced punch, send Revchi flying, taking him out with one attack, and giving his grimoire back, while also freeing him. It would be at this moment that challenges Asta to a fight to see the difference between where they currently stand, because as long as can remember, Asta has always been leaps and bounds in front of him. Even though Asta had no magic, could never beat him, not even once. When Asta was asked about his abilities, he would say he doesn't know where they came from, but they act on completely different principles than magic, but fundamentally achieve the same goal. Anyways, going back to the present, we would see Asta telling that could wait. Let's go get some food. I think Sister Lily's making me your favorite food. This is when Yuno would accept with them going back to the church and eating. With Yuno saying, okay, Asta, it's time. With Asta with a bored expression saying, okay, you win, let's go. With everyone in the church following them outside, being stoked to see Asta versus Yuno, knowing that they were the two strongest in the church and had the most potential. So they all went outside. Then when Yuno would say, are you ready? Also with him saying, yeah, let's see if you can make this interesting. Immediately Yuno would send tons of wind blast at Asta along with wind blades. But of course, what all Asta would do is make a barrier, and it would become clear to Yuno at that instant that there was no way for him to penetrate Asta's barrier. After trying for a full hour, Yuno would run out of stamina, and in this instant, Asta would put his barrier down with a bored expression, telling Yuno that was no fun, and teleporting behind him and taking him out with a precise strike to his neck. Yuno would get up hours later, telling Asta that he would surpass him and become the Wizard King, with Asta telling him go for it and that he wanted to join the Magic Knights as well because he thought it could bring him the fun and excitement he was looking for. For this officially making Yuno and Asta rivals, we see Asta go back into his room where we would see it for the first time, a 5-leaf Grimoire. As Asta was leaving the Grimoire Tower earlier, this one came out of nowhere towards him, and Asta gladly took it, thinking it was, well, he thought it was interesting to say the least, because he knew he had no magic. But this is when it clicked for Asta. Him realizing that this Grimoire came to him because it was anti-magic, the opposite of magic. This is when Asta would smile, realizing that this just made things a lot more interesting. Ultimately, Asta is able to enter the mindscape of the 5-leaf Grimoire because of him being an Esper. Well, Esper's having powers, like telepathy and stuff. He would be easily able to do this. I hope you guys crack that. You know what I mean? Anyways, he enters the mindscape of the 5-leaf Grimoire because of him being an Esper. And meeting with Libe and challenging him to fight for his powers, which Libe would laugh, but would agree to this. This is when we would say and see Asta win, with Libe going to explain his backstory and everything, with Asta agreeing to ultimately help Libe because it sounded and looked fun and his powers are interesting, with Asta telling Libe that we should be partners instead of me having all the control, will lead to them becoming partners. As this is when we see both Asta and train for the Magic Knight exams, with Asta training with both his Esper powers and anti-magic power, and with training with his new Grimoire and his wind magic. This is when we then get to the Royal Magic Knight exams, with them both going together, and after traversing over the terrain, they would finally reach it, the royal capital of the Clover Kingdom. There they would enter with Nero, just like in the main timeline, finding an attraction to Asta and landing on top of his head. Of course, after this happens, they would start the exams with, Asta not having any magic like in the main timeline, but also do none of the stuff that was available. Actually, no, Asta would destroy every test using his telekinetic powers. And yeah, never mind, he would stomp every test with all the Magic Knights being impressed, but they would note that Asta has no mana, and they'd be questioning how he was even pulling all this stuff off. Like I said before, all of Asta's abilities practically do things like, mana does, but, he doesn't actually use mana. So anyways, after all this would take place, we would then see the 1v1 matches be announced with, wanting to fight Asta, but a royal running up to Asta saying he needs to learn his place as a commoner and challenging him. This is when the royal would try to attack Asta with some water magic or something, but yeah, no. Asta would do his signature, teleport behind him, and attack him, as Asta, having Shimazaki's powers, would have incredible sensory, being able to sense what somebody was about to do before they even did it, allowing him to easily clock attacks and easily take people out without even trying. And Asta had been refining his attacks just so he could easily take out people. Plus, you got to remember that Asta has telekinetic strength, so he's actually getting stronger and buffing his physical stats when he attacks. So yeah, these aren't just baby blows. Anyway, Asta takes him out, and with that being said, this would be Asta winning. Ultimately, would win his match against a royal who thought he could, upstage as well. That doesn't work. Anyways, all the captains, they start picking people, and they all raise their hand for just like in the main timeline. Chooses the Golden Dawn. And when it's Asta's turn, I'm not gonna lie, the only person that raises their hand is Yami. They'd all acknowledge that Asta was impressive and that he was pretty cool, but they would all ultimately choose not to go with him because he doesn't have any mana. With Yami questioning Asta, asking him how he was able to pull that off, with Asta just simply stating back that his powers worked on a completely different plane compared to mana and magic, but they fundamentally follow the same principle. They basically can be used the same way. This is when Yami would be interested by Asta and say, "You're a lot stronger or a lot buffer than most mages. Why is that?" Asta will respond by saying he's been training his body ever since he was little, which was true. Just like in the main timeline, Asta still trained his body really hard because at one point before he gained his telekinetic powers, he, trained hard to match not having magic. But on top of that, he kept doing it anyways, even though he gained telekinetic powers because, well, Asta in his brain still viewed magic as a worthy rival for his powers. So, yeah, he wanted to take every advantage he could get, which is why he was low-key interested in, like, Libe and anti-magic and stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyway, finding all this interesting, Yami decides to add Asta to the Black Bulls. So, fast forward to Asta and, saying their goodbyes as they both would go to their captains and, go back to their squads. Asta would be taken by Yami and Fenrir to, the Black Bulls base. And this is when Magma and Luck would tell Asta that if he really wants to join the Black Bulls, he's going to have to do the ceremony. The ceremony being normally in canon, Magna throwing the balls and Asta countering it. But Luck, clocking how strong Asta looked, would ask, "Can we fight him instead, Magna?" With Magna obviously saying, "That'd be so manly." So Asta's like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds fun. Show me if you guys are really strong enough to push my limits." Asta, Luck, and Magna all go out with the rest of the Black Bull following to watch this match, thinking that it might be fun to see. But Vanessa would also tell them that they don't need to go too hard on a rookie, They're trying to, recruit members, not, leave them out to dry. But Yami would tell him, based off what he saw in that exam, this kid is on another level entirely. They need to watch themselves, not the other way around. With Luck and Magna thinking he's joking, not taking Yami seriously, which was a huge mistake. Magna and Luck get ready to battle and get in their battle stance, with them saying and telling Asta, was he ready? Asta would immediately say, "Yeah, I'm ready," with a bored expression once again plastered on his face, as over this time period, Asta still had not thought anybody could beat him. And with the addition of anti-magic, I genuinely don't know why he would think any other different, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just made him even stronger. And like, over that time, I will explain what Asta learned with anti-magic, but he has to get pushed to use it, which I'm just going to tell you this right now. Luck and Magna aren't doing that. Magna would start firing off his magic, and Luck would rush towards, Asta. But all Asta would do was just create a barrier, which would stop Luck and Magna's attack, with them both being shocked. After this, we would see Asta teleport behind Magna, taking him out with one blow. And then we see Luck react to, him just barely as he teleports behind him, trying to punch Asta. But that's saying, "That's pretty good. Most people can't react to me." But this is when Asta would clock Luck with a punch in the stomach, sending him flying with a telekinetic, enhanced punch. And Asta, you got to remember, is stronger than an average mage, so he just sends Luck tumbling, just taking out both of them without even really trying that hard. Luck and Magna would wake up hours later with the rest of the Black Bulls being spun and giving Asta his praises. Once Magna and Luck wake up, they're confused. They wonder what happened to them. But this is when Asta would tell him that he won and that he expects them to, treat him like a Black Bull member now. With Magna saying, "You're so manly. We can't believe we just lost to like our junior." With Luck saying, "Yeah, I got to fight you more. And we're going to spar and stuff." They get kind of cool. Asta would say, "You guys aren't weak, but, you're not enough to make me have any fun." With Magna, Luck kind of just thinking Asta's still kind of cool, despite that kind of harsh statement. Anyways, Asta's given the Black Bull robe. And with that being, said and him getting that, this would be the end of this. As the next thing we see is Magna beginning to show Asta around, with them running into a girl, this girl being Noelle Silva, which unironically, I'm going to skip this entire part because literally nothing changes. The only thing that changes is when Noelle loses control of her magic and creates the giant bubble. Asta just teleports up to her, uses his telekinetic powers to grab Noelle out of her spell, and it just disperses. Everything else goes the same. Noelle also gets a crush on Asta, and all that stuff happens. So, with all that being said, we can now move on to the next arc in the story, which would have been the village arc or whatever. So, Magna and Yami come back one day, and they're like, hey, you guys have to do a mission for these villagers because me and, Magna lost a bet. So, ultimately, the team is Asta, Noelle, and Love. Oh, wait, not Love. Magna, my bad. So, they go to Magna's village, and they're like, gotta collect these boars. So what ends up happening there is Asta with his teleportation easily takes care of the boars without even trying. Noelle and Magna barely have to do anything. So they're good and fresh. Anyways, after taking them back to the village, they would get there early than in the original timeline. So after giving him the, boars and, them getting paid, and, them filing the mission report, this is when the Eye of the Midnight Sun goons, who I'm just gonna call goons, I don't remember, the Keist or something. He pulls up and he's like, hey, give us the magic stone. And then the chief is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Asta, he's like, I'm having none of this. He's like, why do you guys want that stone? Is it really that important to you? Within, him going yes, it is. And who do you think you are to interrupt us? This is when he would then start firing his magic along with his other goonies at Asta. And, Noelle and Magna, with Asta creating a barrier to protect all three of them. This is when Asta would then say, oh, so it's like that. Then I hope you guys are interesting enough to at least give me some fun. This is when he says, you are a fool, weakling, and, all that stuff he says in the main timeline. But, Asta just teleports in front of him, not even going behind him this time, which would shock him because he's like, wait, how did he just, before he can even react, Asta amping his power, with a telekinesis and whatnot, he just slams him in the stomach with a punch to the solar plexus, literally making him lose all his breath. He can't even talk anymore, instantly taking him out. The other two Goonies try to fire their magic, but Asta's immediately gone, taking both of them out without even trying. With this being said, this immediately ends this threat to the arc. I'm not gonna lie. Asta is kind of broken, but that's what you would expect from a Mob Psycho character against these early threats in Black Clover, I'm not gonna lie. They tie him up. Magnus starts to question them about why they wanted the stone and what they were even doing or who they even were, with them all committing the kamikaze just like in the main timeline, with Asta being taken back by this and thinking they're all so hardcore for taking that route when they genuinely could have just told them what they wanted to know. But nonetheless, they ignore it. Nero gets the magic stone, just like in the main timeline, and gives it to Asta, with him wondering what the heck this even really was or what this really meant. But nonetheless, they make it back to the Black Bull's base, with the villagers thanking them for saving them. And this is when we see Yami tell them to go report it to Julius. So they go do that. After that happens, we then see, after the coming weeks, Asta would be training like crazy, trying to get even stronger so nobody can beat him, just trying to get to the highest limit he can, because he knew was getting stronger, and that he wants to be sure to give the greatest challenge he can get, because he knows wants to become the Wizard King, and he thinks that aspiration would make like a worthy opponent. He thinks he can make him have some fun. At least that's what Asta wants to believe. So anyways, after all this is said and done, after this week is done, we would then see Yami tell them that there's been a dungeon that's opened up, and that he wants Asta, Noelle, and Luck this time to go explore the dungeon. And he tells he tells Asta specifically that Julius wanted him. So yeah, this is what they're going to go do. So they're going to go to the dungeon. So they go into the dungeon, they enter it, and they start walking around for a while, just talking, hashing it out, going over strategies to how to get to the treasure room, when out of nowhere, Luck would sense a presence and just dip off, activating tons of traps, with Noelle just talking to Asta what the heck is going on. This is when Asta would say, hey, don't worry about him, we'll get him back eventually. The both of them would move forward, with Noelle kind of clocking it dang, I'm really alone with the guy and she's starting to blush, just landing traps after traps. After a while, Asta just clocks Noel's just being really weird, but he's not really caring that much until one of the traps she lands in almost like, takes her out. But Asta with his hand with his telekinetic powers. But just at that moment, a wind blade comes out of nowhere and he slashes it. This is when Asta would clock it. Wind, he knew it. It was his rival. It was his brother. But the rest of the Golden Dawn appear and they all meet Asta. And, well, Noel and Mimosas, they start chatting it up with Klaus being ignored by Asta and, as they're hashing it out, going back over, everything, just being brothers, I don't really know what to tell you. They're just talking, reliving. I say, like 7 times, but you get the point. So they're just having a great time. They're just chatting it up while Klaus is just, you're commoners and you're lame and you don't really do anything. You're just pathetic. You're a part of the worst squad. He's just saying all this stuff. Asta ignoring him, not really thinking he's that much, not even thinking he could give him even the slightest bit of joy, with just a bored expression looking at Klaus, just walking off, telling that he's going to win in this battle of theirs. They get to the end with saying, I would expect nothing less from my rival. And Klaus just accepting this as well as this is what he wanted anyways. So ultimately, Noel, Asta split from the Golden Dawn and they go to find Luck. Luck is pretty beat up and bruised. But this is when Asta starts healing him, using his telekinetic powers. Now, he can't heal that well, but he can heal some. So he starts healing him a little bit, telling Luck that was stupid, with Noel getting on his case, really bad about it. Because, what the heck are you doing, dude? We need you. You're, supposed to be, the one in charge. But, yeah, no. Luck had none of that. But he did realize that he has the Black Bulls now, so he calms down and stops being crazy and all that stuff. Anyways, this is when they would hear a noise and they would head towards it, with them running it back into the Golden Dawn team, with Mimosa and Klaus being cooked and about to meet his end. This is when Asta, with just one hand, would stop the mineral blade that was about to finish off his brother, saying, I thought you were supposed to become the strongest, the Wizard King, and challenge me. Give me a fun smile. Make it fun. What are you doing? Why are you about to lose? Now, Asta immediately knew how strong was. He was nowhere near him, not even close, but he did know how strong he was. So the fact that somebody was testing. Also, by the way, just to clarify, is way stronger than he was in the original timeline by this point, as he trained twice as hard to reach Asta's telekinetic powers and stuff. Yeah, to no avail. And hasn't even seen Asta use anti-magic, so yeah, he doesn't even remotely know how big the gap is between the two of them. But yeah, it's immense, to say the least. If I had to really just gauge you, Asta just might be captain level already. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, ultimately, Asta just pretty much throws the mineral blade against the wall and says, who do you think you are? With Mars, turning and saying, who do you think you are? Sending multiple mineral blades at the three, with Asta making a barrier. This is when, by the way, Noel did unlock Sea Dragon's lair. She unlocked that. It's just she unlocked it by training with Asta instead of, when it was important at the village. So yeah, she still had that. So this is when Asta would tell her to go over there and use that spell, that her defensive spell, to cover the rest of the Golden Dawn, because they're about to get cooked, and Asta just wants to fight, and Luck's already injured, so it just makes the most sense for him to take him on by himself. So this is when Asta would jump down, saying, I don't know what your deal is, but I'm gonna finish this quickly. I can't let you hurt these people, especially not my rival. He's the one who's gonna give me a smile. But if you can give me one, I'll admit you're pretty strong. So Mars starts smiling crazily, throwing more mineral blades, just using everything in his bag, using multiple elements, just firing magic. Asta just making one barrier, takes no damage at all. He's just looking at these is this it? Is this all you have? With Mars saying, what? No, there's no way you're just... But before Mars could even think about anything else, there he was, right in front of him. Asta. He just, once again, telekinetic punch enhanced. But because Mars is just confused with all this magic, he shows it off for the first time. He starts infusing his magic, his anti-magic, into his fist, on top of telekinetic energy, on top of his busted physical strength, and slams Mars into his solar plexus, leaving him breathless and taking him out with one strike, literally sending him into the side of the mountain, the cave, just like starting to destroy it just from his one punch. This leaves the Golden Dawn team stunned, and just seeing the difference between their power scoffs. But this is when they also would tell them that they need to get to the treasure room and get all the treasures. So they rush over there and get them. Once they get all the treasures, this is when Asta would make a barrier around them and teleport them up out of there. Mars getting saved by that friend of his friends. Yeah, I think it was more than one. So he gets saved by his friends. And with that being said, they all go their separate ways, with Klaus apologizing to Asta and for calling them commoners after seeing Asta's ridiculous display of power. And Asta saying, it's okay. Just watch what you say to others. You never know how strong they are, especially when you're as weak as you are. With Klaus low-key feeling kind of like, dang, you just call me weak, but you can't do nothing about it because he is. With, the splitting, this is when Asta, Noelle, and Luck would make it back to Yami and report that they successfully completed the dungeon, with Yami telling them to not tell him and go tell the Wizard King, go report it to him. So Luck decides to stay back, not really caring about all that nonsense. And Asta and Noelle go running back into the Golden Dawn team as they were told the exact same thing. This is when they would all enter the Capitol building and they see him, Julius Neverchrono, the current Wizard King. But Asta and didn't know that. So everybody around them just started getting on a knee. And they were telling them who they are, and then they did the same thing, like, oh, wow, we didn't know that's who it was. Anyways, Julius says, calm down. It's not really that serious. So he takes them to, his room, and they start telling him about the treasures. Tells him about the spirit that went into his book or something like that. And Julius is like, oh, don't worry, that thing's going to help you a lot. They also ask about what it takes to become the Wizard King. Even Asa being interested in this is what, he perceives to be the peak of power. And you can just feel how strong Julius is without even having any magic. It's just telekinetic senses. You know what I mean? Like, he has extremely enhanced senses. So, yeah, it's easy for him to sense even, somebody who's using a completely different power source. Julius goes into how it takes about merit and stuff, telling that's all it takes to become, the king. So, ultimately, he jots down in his mind, saving it. But, them all being invited to the ceremony, this is when they would get there, and all the Magic Knights would get their upgrades, like they do in the regular timeline. This is when they would all go to the banquet, and all of a sudden, are just talking, chilling, talking it up, being brothers and whatnot, sitting next to each other. As would start to ask Asuka about that power he used, with also telling him that's the anti-magic in the Grimoire that he was telling him about, but he just showed it off for the first time. He's been training it non-stop, but he's never had to use it against a single opponent. And that he only used it against Mars because she was covered in magic, and he just, thought it'd be the most efficient way to take him out. So really, just heard, I'm weak. You don't even need to use that much power against me. You didn't need to do that. In fact, he's literally just saying he didn't even need to use it against him. So yeah, he's kind of like, wow, I really need to get stronger. That's all is hearing. But then they start chatting it up until Noelle is thrown water on by her sister, Nebra. And then there's Solid, who's just making fun of her, telling her know her place. She's a loser. She shouldn't be here. They tell her and mock her, and Noelle's about to leave, crying her eyes out, with Nozel coming over there and just saying, you are an absolute failure. This is when Asta, hearing all this, would get mad. He teleports next to Noelle, shocking all three of them, because they're like, wait, what? He could teleport? With him then using his telekinetic powers to wash off Noelle, grabbing her hand and teleporting her over there to their table, saying to Noelle that those guys are just scum and you shouldn't listen to them. But this is when Solid and Nebra would get mad because he just interfered in them bullying their sister, which is low-key crazy. Why are you bullying your sister at a public event? What do you have against your sister? I don't know. Anyways, they go over there and they start trying to fight Asta, which this just does not work at all. Asta just sends them flying into a wall with just one swipe of his hand, shocking Nozel, literally knocking them out. This is when Noelle would be shocked by this because she knows how strong they are. But this is when the vice captain of the Golden Dawn would be like, you need to learn your place, commoner, trying to use some sand magic, I think, or something like that. With Asta just doing the same thing, just swatting out of his way, grabbing the sand user, just flinging him into another wall. This is when Nozel, seeing how strong Asta is, will start amping up his magical pressure, trying to intimidate the boy. But this is when Noazelle would be shocked to find out that he's getting like pressed. He's wondering what's happening. Why do I feel this pressure on me? But this was Asta's telekinetic abilities. He was literally pushing pressure onto Noazelle, trying to sink him into the ground. But Noazelle wasn't a captain for no reason. He's able to resist this somewhat, but it's still pretty effective. You know, like he can barely like resist it. Like, I mean, it's literally gravity being pushed on you. Anyways, from Goleon, or Fraud Goleon, I guess not anymore because he actually did, you know, the manga spoilers, never mind. Anyways, he comes in and tries to mitigate the situation with, after Asta finishing his food and not really wanting to hear any of this, decides to teleport out of there. After getting out of there, this is when we would see Asta see as the kingdom was like in smoke and fire, wondering what's going on. He'd be walking around, looking around, seeing these weird zombies, these undead creatures, wondering, is this an invasion or something? Asta immediately just starts teleporting around, taking out all these guys by himself before really anybody could even get involved. He runs into Rades, attacking a little girl, wondering, wait, what do you think you're doing? Rades clocks him, sees him. He thinks, who is this boy? Where did he just come from? But before Rades can even continue or even think, it was already over. Been slammed into the ground by an unknown force, knocked out, unconscious. Asta teleports to the little girl, teleporting to Noelle, handing the girl to her, with her literally being in the room still, like hadn't even left yet. Like Asta did all that in like 2 or 3 minutes. Like teleportation sensory is kind of broken. He gives her the little girl, you know, thinking that'd be the safest place to put a little girl. So that's what he does. He dips. He sees if there's anything else going on, but no. Turns out that was just the leader, and he just took him out pretty easily. This is when Leopold and everybody else would be stunned by this, knowing that one guy just stopped an invasion in like 3 minutes. They'd all be like, dang, this guy's strong. Is this guy really just a kid? Is he not a Magic Knight captain? That's what some of them be thinking. This is when Leopold, just like in canon, would announce Asta as his rival, with, you know, knowing he had to get stronger and whatnot. But actually, he didn't really take down the whole invasion because there were still more around, like the witch girl and stuff. This is when the rest of the Magic Knights would move out to take care of like the rest of it and stuff like that. But while all this was happening, for some reason there be it a portal appearing under Asta, not for Goleon this time, because, well, Asta's just a bigger threat. Now Asta could have teleported out of the way of this, but he was interested. He thought for the first time this seemed a little fun, so he let it happen with Noelle screaming, going like, Asta! And he goes through the portal. This is when he see it, a figure floating in the air. He looked dangerous. Asta doesn't care though. He starts smiling. He even starts to crack a little laugh. He'd be like, so who are you supposed to be? This is when Lich would announce himself and say he's a leader of the Midnight Sun and that he's interfering with his plans. Asta, not caring about this at all, would say, well, you might need to do some better plans. Something like that, you know, joking. Shimazaki, am I right? Anyways, Lich starts trying to take Asta out with his light spears, with Asta actually low-key being impressed. He's like, dang, this guy's actually pretty fast, and his magic is moving pretty quick. He's actually struggling for a bit, but this is when Asta would be like, okay, yeah, this was interesting, but Asta has teleportation, so yeah, and sensory. He kind of just reads all these attacks and just dodges them with teleportation. Asta teleports behind Lit, but he already knew he could do that, so he uses his reaction and higher senses to just clock Asta, which he's kind of shocked about. Asta teleports back, realizing that Lich is actually a serious opponent, so he locks in. He pulls out his Grimoire, which Lich actually didn't even know he had. This is when Asta would pull it out for the first time, the Demon Dweller, the big sword. This is when he would then infuse it with tons of anti-magic, telling Libe to give him as much as he can. Asta already mastering this sword, unlike in the main timeline, because he really was locked in on his training. Also just being linked with Libe already, this was pretty simple to do. Asta rushes at Lich, with him noting that sword is weird, but before he can even do anything, Asta speed blitzes him, literally slashing him with the sword one good time, with Lich noting that that sword appears to negate magic, but he didn't even expect Asta to be this strong. But yeah, Asta sends him flying out of the sky, and then uses his telekinetic powers to just hold Lich down so he can't do anything. He's just stuck, wondering why he can't get up. This is when Asta would say, you're pretty weak, but I did have to use more power against you than most, so she felt pretty proud. But this is when like Raya would use a portal to get Lich out of there, and just as that's happening, we would then see Julius appear to get Asta, getting Asta up out of there. Ultimately, this causing like I guess like a intermediate like situation where neither opponent truly won, but Asta won. But you know, Julius thinks he's saving him, but that's really not the case at all. Lich just got away barely, as Asta couldn't really clock what was happening. It just kind of appeared and he was gone. With this being said, they're taken back. Asta reveals what he just learned, and he fought the captain. With Julius being shocked, you know, having time powers, being able to see into the future, he's like, wait, so you're telling me you just fought the same guy that would have gave me problems? Is this kid already Wizard King level? Julius would be thinking. But Asta, honestly, didn't really even think Lich was that big of a problem. But then again, I mean, he's using power that he would get like seasons upon seasons later, so it's really not that big of a shock if we're being honest. He's literally linked with Levi already. Anyways, after all this happens, the commotion would die. They save everybody. You know, would show Asta his new power, and he would not be impressed. Literally getting rid of his Windbird and Windblade and Windstorm and doing it with no difficulty. I actually haven't used an anti-magic now though, but still, nonetheless, just dissipates with no difficulty. You know, proclaiming that he will get stronger. Anyways, after all this happens, this is when the Black Bulls would be tasked with getting the rest of the magic stones, but this would come months and months later. As what we would actually see happen next in the story is we see Asta grinding for another 3 months straight, just going out, getting the Black Bulls tons of stars, just locking in, trying to show everybody who he was, that he was trying to be the strongest. No, not just trying, but he really was the strongest, because like this dude Asta is just farming stars. Like the Black Bulls just getting tons of stars from Julius during these 3 months. But after these 3 months are done and Asta learning how to fly on his like you know, anti-magic blade or his demon dweller, Asta would ultimately figure this is pointless because he literally can just fly with his telekinetic powers. But him getting a higher control over anti-magic, there's no problem with that in case somebody has a way to disrupt his telekinetic powers. And on top of that, Asta would also realize that Libe can become a little, you know, Pikachu-like creature and sit on his arm. But she would start doing more because their connection is just like that big now. They just really tapped in that much. But anyways, Fenrir would ask Asta one day, does he want to go to a mixer? If Asta saying sure, why not? Asta goes to the mixer. He meets Rebecca. Luck is there with him, and they're chatting it up. None of them really getting along except Asta and Rebecca as well. Asta can still relate to her just like in the main timeline, with Noelle being a crazy stalker right now, just stalking out Asta. That's her crush, you know. She thinks that's her man. Ultimately, it's just literally not. Asta doesn't even treat Noelle in that mindset. He has no idea. Anyways, them hitting it off as that man still tries to, you know, do that to Rebecca. Asta literally just throwing him into a wall, just walking out of there. She takes him home, shows him her brothers and sisters. They talk it up. This is when we'd see it. I don't know why. Ghost shows up because Maria's there, and Ghost is like, Asta, stop trying to take my little sister. You know how this goes. And then he's like, no, I'm gonna do what I want. But he also thinks Ghost is crazy. He thinks he's lost it. Anyway, this is when we see Mother Teresa as she just tell Asta there's some crazy activities going on as a bunch of the kids are starting to disappear. Fast forward 2 hours later, and now even Rebecca's like brothers and sisters are gone, just sneaking out of their vision completely. This is when Asta, along with Maria also being gone to Ghost goes to, along with Mother Teresa, they head out towards the mountains to go see if this is where they went. Asta just teleports to where he thinks the kids are though, because he could literally just sense them with telekinetic energy, seeing two bums trying to take the kids before they even know what's going on. Asta takes them out. He takes out this giant mud monster too, that I guess was there to help him out, or was created by their magic and was supposed to defend him. Asta easily beats it. After this happens, Asta would be really happy about everything he'd done. He'd be ready to take these guys back to the Clover Kingdom for investigation. But this is when he clocked it, a portal opening. And that's when he see him again. It'd be Lich, Raya. They'd be looking at him, shocked, thinking it's you again, ruining my plans once more. Asta, immediately realizing his Lich, would completely get a little smirk on his face, wondering if he got stronger, but sensing nothing, knowing he really didn't. So he gets his bored expression back on his face, not seeing him as a real threat, knowing he's not going to have any fun. But this is when Asta would tell Lich that he's not here to play games. And this is when him and Raya would try to jump Asta. This is not working at all, as Asta, having refined his abilities for 3 months straight, I don't know what to tell you. In fact, his telekinetic powers are so strong that he literally just grabs both of them in midair, slams them into the ground, and just holds them there, saying, "You guys are so much beneath me. You don't even deserve to be in the same room or space as me." This is when Ghost would eventually show up with Teresa. They get the kids out of there, which is great because now Asta can lock in on these guys. Asta picks him up, starts crushing him, saying, "Why shouldn't he just finish him right now?" But just at that moment, this is when we see it. We see Beast Claw. We see some fire coming out of nowhere, and Asta has to teleport last second to avoid, with Lich and Raya getting released. This would be it, the third eye appearing, making their stand with their, their leader Lich. As Lich would tell them all that they have to destroy this kid. He's so strong. He's to be eliminated for their plans to progress. This is when they all activate their third eyes, going full power, knowing that Asta needed to be eliminated right now, as she's too much of a threat to be kept alive. Asta would see them, see him getting power, knowing their magic was doubling and tripling, starting to smirk, getting a smile, actually started to laugh a bit, knowing that he might actually be able to have some fun. This is when Asta pulls it out, his Grimoire. He starts grabbing the sword. He starts infusing it with tons of anti-magic thanks to Libe, his connection. Libe appears on the side. He says, "Let's do this." This is when Asta would start one of what everybody would then go on to say one of the most legendary battles of all time that no one ever got to see. Asta versus the third eye and Lich. Asta would jump up using his speed and telekinetic powers to enhance it. He slashed at Fauna. Fauna would dodge. Veto and Raya trying to land attacks on Asta, but to no avail. He's too fast. He used a barrier anytime one of them would get too close, but he couldn't react. Asta, sensory, focused, locked in, just casually dodging all their attacks. Anything he could dodge, he teleported. Lich trying to use his speed to predict Asta, but just like Tetsuru against Shimazaki, wasn't working. He finally got a good move in. He stabbed Lich through the chest, leaving him out to die. This is when Fauna, getting extremely mad, we're calling the Salamander, trying to hit him with a max Salamander flame attack. But this is when Asta would appear next to her before she could even launch the attack, stabbing through her with his anti-magic blade, finishing off Fauna next. This is when Veto and Raya would scream, seeing their comrades both be taken down, especially their leader. Veto trying to do anything but try. This is when Asta would activate his barrier, starting to smirk, saying, "You guys are strong, but my abilities are too powerful for you." He would teleport from out of his barrier, shocking both. He slashed Veto, he slashed Raya, and this is an anti-magic blade buff by Libe. These guys are getting taken care of pretty easily here. They all crash into the ground. They're all looking like they're done. This is when Asta would say, "Are you guys finished? Are you ready to give it up?" This is when they all get up, attempting to do some last stand. They all start charging their magic. It's the highest they can do. This is when Asta says, "Fine, let's finish it." He would grab his blade, infuse it with as much anti-magic as humanly possible, saying this will be it. This is when they both launch their attacks. All the third eye launching their attacks. Full power. Asta fully powers up his black anti-magic sword. And then he, attacks with it, using his full attack, along with telekinetic energy to increase the output of the attack. Asta's attack dwarfs all the third eye, including Lich, annihilating them from existence. Because, they're mainly just reincarnations and stuff. So yeah, they get wiped off the map. They're taken care of by one dude. Asta, for the first time, is actually exhausted, drained, tired, smiling, seeing as if he finally had a real match, able to actually push him to use anti-magic actually efficiently, actually pushes some of his training. But despite him actually having some fun, being interested, he realized that now the only people that had ever interested him are gone. and then he starts to do it again, get a bored expression, finding that it's not really that fun. But he did say that was a fun fight. This is when all the Magic Knight captains would show up, and I'd be like, Asta, what happened here? You know, like the meme. And he'd be like, I just took down the third eye. This is when he get taken back, and Julius would question him. You know, they start talking and chatting, going like, did you really take him down? With Asta saying yes. This is when Asta would use telekinetic powers to, you know, tell Julius. Julius would actually, you know, hit it. He'd be like, dang, he really did. And they'd all be shocked by this. This is when Julius tells Asta that they have a mole and that he hopes that he can help him with his anti-magic to snuff him out. This is to be revealed that it was the Purple Orca's captain. And, well, he gets cooked, he gets trapped, and, well, he's not getting out to see the light of day. Anyways, after that happens, Julius would then follow up on the magic stone retrieval, which, with that being said, I'm going to have a major time skip. Now, I know you guys might be thinking, well, what about the Seawater Temple, and what about the Witch's Forest, and all this cool stuff? Well, this is what you need to know about both of these arcs that we're definitely skipping because they serve no real points. First of all, the Seawater Temple, they get the Magic Stone, which is really the most important thing there. What you need to know about that is that the rest of the Black Bulls feel they're inferior to Asta and start locking in and training even harder than they will ever have. Seeing as Asta was just carrying them and they were getting rewarded for it, they lock in. That's what you need to know about that. So, yeah, NOL gets crazy progress doing the Sea Dragon's War just like in canon and stuff. But yeah, mostly everything goes like in canon and they get the stone. The most important thing to happen there. Next, Witch's Force. Vanessa clocks it even harder than the rest of the Black Bulls had at the time. And she's like, oh, I need to get stronger. So, not only do they need to go get the Magic Stone from the Witch's Force, but because of it's literally a mission from Julius. But she also wants to get stronger through her mom's help. So, yeah, it's Vanessa, Asta, Noelle, and low-key, actually, no, it's just all the Black Bulls. They all go to the Witch's Forest to go get the stone back. So yeah, they arrive in the Witch Queen's place, and Vanessa's like, can you help me get stronger? The Witch Queen starts treating Vanessa like crap because she's a bum, and you know, they all get mad at her for that. The Diamond Kingdom. Yeah, the Diamond Kingdom attacks, trying to get the Magic Stone, still thinking that they're aligned with, like, the Third Eye. Or, no, my bad, they were going for their own reasons. But this is when Asta would appear alongside the rest of the Black Bulls who were amped from the Seawater Temple, and they just proceed to destroy the forces. But Vados not even getting, like, his, transformation because he couldn't even get the magic. He just gets taken out so quick. They annihilate all the forces. The Witch Queen is shocked. The Witch Queen uses her blood magic, though. She's like, nah, Vanessa, you're going to stay. Asta not even being able to get affected by this, which the Witch Queen would be shocked by. Ultimately, Vanessa would still get her character development and summon the cat, a fate. The cat literally starts saving the Black Bulls, and it buys Asta enough time to put up enough anti-magic to slash the Queen, not killing her because of Vanessa's mom. Ultimately, after this happens, Vanessa would cook her mom. She still unlocked it and proved her mom wrong. Her mom letting them all leave with the Magic Stone and flee. So that's exactly what happens. And they claim another Magic Stone. With this being said, they then go give all the Magic Stones back to Julius, having officially completed this mission and task. And as for Zagreid, for anyone wondering, or Nero or anything, Nero reveals herself and tells Asta that he achieved the goal that she had been trying to do for, generations and stuff. Collect all the Magic Stones, return to the Clover Kingdom, stop Zagreid. And if it wasn't very clear, Zagreid never got revived because they never got all the Magic Stones. Lich is still in the pod somewhere because, well, they got annihilated in the... They literally got annihilated in the cave arc, you know what I mean? So they're already done. Like, all the leadership is done, so there's no more Midnight Sun. The Elf Reincarnation arc never happens because, well, the stones never get put into the tablet for it to happen. And like I said, Zagreid never gets revived because the stones are never gathered to begin with. So he doesn't even get revived. It's not even just as bad as him not getting his Grimoire and, getting all that. He literally just never gets revived. Like, Asta stopped the threat before it even started. So that's what happens with all that. But because all this happens, we're able to do a time skip until about 6 months later with Noelle, Asta, their respective teams getting way stronger. But this is when Julius will call in, telling him that the Heart Kingdom had requested a special treaty to take on the Spade Kingdom. This is when Asta and a select group of members of Julius's picking, so like Mimosa, like Luck, I think like Magna, Vanessa, and Noelle, and they would all get sent to the Heart Kingdom. This is when they would meet Lola Petra. Lola Petra would tell them about the Spade Kingdom and what they're up to, what they're trying to do. Asta and all the Black Clover members are like, nah, we're not here for it. The Clover Kingdom team, they're like, no, we're not going for any of that. So they all decide that this is where the treaty's gonna make, and this is what's gonna happen. So the Clover Kingdom and like the Spade, like not the Spade Kingdom, but the Heart Kingdom make a pact, and they agree to work together. So now they're at a truce, and this is when they all train like crazy for like a month. And I specifically say a month because they don't really need more than that. So ultimately, the Dark Triad starts getting bases taken out by one man in particular, Asta. He's just targeting them, not caring anything about it. And they can't really do anything to stop Asta because he just teleports their bases, nukes them with his power, and then just dips, with them really having nothing they can do about it. So far, Asta's just been attacked this whole series, this movie, I guess, with nobody really being able to do anything because of his sensory and stuff. Ultimately, this is when the Dark Triad would realize they have no choice. Now, normally I would probably say the Dark Triad would split up and they would try to take on Noelle with Vanica, and then Zenon would go and take on or something, and then Dante, he'd go on and take Asta. They all split and fight and whatnot, what have you. But that's actually not what happens in this. The Dark Triad just realizes that this man Asta is too big of a threat. So they set up a trap base and they all plan to jump him, which works perfectly. Asta comes into a base on a regular routine thinking he's just going to destroy it, which he does. But just before he can even think about leaving, this is when he's trapped in a barrier, which after having all this time to study him, they'd actually be able to create a shield of magic that can actually stop Asta from just dipping out with his telekinetic powers. So Asta's stuck and trapped thinking this is interesting, being kind of confused what's going on. This is when he would sense it. He sensed 3 presences with immense mana, immense magic. He just knows they're strong, even though he has no magic. And this is when you see them all around him coming out of nowhere. The Dark Triad. We see Vanica, he see Dante, and he would see Zenon as they all are powered up to their max power right off the rip, knowing how strong Asta is. Asta saying, dang, I guess you guys have all showed up in your Sunday best for me. And starting to laugh, getting a smirk, knowing these guys are going to push his limits to the absolute most. This is when the Dark Triad, not playing any games, would all start launching magic and attacking Asta. Now, I know Asta's strong, I know he's powerful, and I know he's been training like crazy, trust me. I've been giving him his training in this, what if and whatnot, but no. Asta gets cooked by the Dark Triad. There's just nothing he can really do here. First of all, they've limited his telekinetic powers with the barrier, and they're jumping him. Dainty has gravity magic, Zenon's magic, and Vanica's magic. No. Curses and stuff, they're struggling. Ultimately, Asta gets cooked, just like Shizumaru did against, everyone, all the telekinetics, the cult, when he got cooked. But this is when Asta would be thinking in his head, he'd be thinking, calm down. They're just mana users. They just use mana. There's just 3 of them. Focus. This is what he'd be thinking. As Asta's low-key looking like he's about to get taken out by them, as this is when Dainty would make a strong attack, thinking this would finish him, a gravity ball ready to crush Asta under it. But this is when it would happen. This is when he would say, focus, and this is when he would open his eyes. They'd be red shot. He slammed every single one of the Triad with an attack so potent, so powerful, full of anti-magic, on their chest, on their back, and one straight through them, straight through their chest. And then he'd be on the other side with them all falling out, barely having the ability to regenerate because of the anti-magic. They think, what the heck was that? This is when Asta would turn around and say, nothing you do will work on me anymore. I'm beyond you now. This is when all 3 of them would get up, slowly regenerating, being extremely damaged from Asta's last attack. They'd all rush at him, literally knowing this is a life or death situation. The first to go with Vanica, Asta would speed blitz her, using his max telekinetic power alongside uh, his slash. He slashed her in half, finishing off Vanica. This is when the other two would lock in. They start actually giving Asta a run for his money. Even though he could sense them, teleporting around was still difficult. And even though he focused to the limit of his telekinetic abilities, he's low-key struggling. Because let's be honest, they're still nerfed because he's in the barrier. And if anything, they've actually been amping the barrier to make Asta's telekinetic powers even weaker. So this is when Asta would know he had to use it. He had to find a way to go beyond. This is when Liebe would say, "It's time, Asta, for us to completely link each other," without saying, "I guess so." This is when Asta and Liebe would do it. They'd form it, Devil Union, for the first time. This is when Dainty, not only Dainty, but Xenon would be shocked. Dante, Xenon attack, thinking that they had a chance. But this is when Xenon would get obliterated with telekinetic enhanced energy pouring into Asta's dweller. It straight up nukes him off the face of the planet. He's nothingness now. Dante's shocked by this, thinking, no. He'd be begging Lucifero for more power. But this is when Lucifero would take over Dainty, using him as like a syndicate to appear in the real world. This is when Asta would be told by Liebe that this was him, the ultimate threat, the threat that killed the one he loved, Lichita, and that this was his ultimate revenge. So when Asta would see him smirking, smiling, this is the most fun he's ever had in his life. He was finally not bored, all the way from a little kid around the age of 4, wanting nothing to have a good fight, finally having one, getting pushed to his limits, his body aching, his body hurting. This was it, the peak of his power being pushed. This is when Asta and Lucifero would have legendary battle that'd be talked in magic history schools for ages on end. They'd battle, they'd throw swords, they'd throw clashing. Lucifero using his gravity powers to overpower Asta, but at the same time, the barrier had collapsed by now, so Asta had literally gained back all his telekinetic powers. He tried using everything against Lucifero, not having that much effect. Lucifero slowly starting to overpower Asta, looking like it's all over for our protagonist. But this is when Liebe would say, "No, we can't lose here." And Asta would agree. They know they have to get even deeper. This is when we would see it. Asta, Liebe, truly connecting and bonding. They do something that hasn't been seen in ages. No, ever. True devil union. This is when Lucifero would notice a difference automatically. As in this instance, Asta would teleport behind him, which was still a super crazy power. With his high senses, able to read everything Lucifero would do before he could do it. But he wasn't strong enough to hurt him. But now the tides have changed. Lucifero's durability at 50% wasn't good enough. He was starting to get hurt by his anti-magic blade, starting to truly feel damage, not being able to do really anything against Asta at this point. Lucifero's scared. He draws on his strongest attack, a gravity orb, even bigger than the one Dainty had made to finish off Asta earlier that didn't succeed, and he threw it at him. Asta, with one slash, fully empowered by telekinetic energy, was slashed through it. This is when Asta would speed with Lucifero, saying he was going to pay for everything he did, with him getting slashed through in the stomach. Asta then making a telekinetic orb empowered by anti-magic. This is when they would fire it at Lucifero, nuking the guy, sending him back to the demon realm, knowing that he was still out there and knowing they'd have to go and finish it for good to truly get revenge for Liebe. But they knew they had to get stronger. But for now, they could celebrate, knowing that they've at least beating him in this way, giving Liebe some closure, just being able to beat him in this regard. With this being said, this is when everything would come to a head as we see Asta, after defeating the Spade Kingdom, occurred and events would happen. Yuna had already discovered that he was a Spade Kingdom prince already. Didn't feel like it needed to be noted because it was already like pretty obvious. Now, if you guys are wondering if I'm going to get into Black Clover manga spoilers, I'm actually not. I'm not going to talk about spoilers ahead, Lucius, because I don't really see the point of it. Just know that this is where I'm going to end the what if, but it's specifically due to the fact that, I don't really think I should talk about an event in a story that I don't really know what fully happened yet, or that I cannot fully speculate on. Yeah, sure, I could just say Asta and would win, and this is a much more powerful Asta, so yeah, I just think like they beat Lucius, so I think that's all I have to really say. And yeah, would become the Wizard King at the end of the day because that was never Asta's goal. Asta's goal, if anything, was to just find an interesting battle, to have fun, and truly take on a strong opponent. Asta and Yuno would battle one more time, with Yuno clearly losing, admitting that Asta was the strongest. But that didn't really matter to Asta at all. He just wanted a good fight, and Yuno gave it to him. So yeah, he acknowledged Yuno as at least somebody who could make life interesting and fun, which is all Asta wanted. This is what he's been seeking throughout the entire story, and he finally found it in a competently EOS, So he's happy. Everything's good for him. Noelle would confess her feelings to Asta, and they would get together. Simple as that. Mimosa and Asta's relationship just didn't get that deep in this story, so yeah, neither did Noelle and Asta's really, but we're just gonna push that. Anyways, with that happening, everything goes like this, with Asta being regarded as one of the strongest magic knight of all time. And that's where I'm going to end this what if off with. Yeah, so maybe that ending felt a little rushed. I'm not too sure how you guys felt about it, but dang, this is the ending to what if Asta was Shimazaki's. No, I was going to say Shimazaki's reincarnation, but no, that's not what this was. This was what if Asta has Shimazaki's abilities. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this what if. If you don't want to send a Black Clover what if, tell me how you liked it in the comments. Really appreciate it. Any love you showed. And yeah, I'm out. I'm going to make more Black Clover what ifs. I'm sorry, but remembering everything in the story is difficult for me, which is why it took me so long to get back to Black Clover. One Piece, I can low-key do those with like the back of my head, because One Piece is like my favorite, anime / manga. And the same thing with My Hero is just, it's a really easy plot to remember. And then like Naruto, yeah, I'm into Naruto a lot too, so it's easy for me to remember. But when it comes to Black Clover, I sometimes forget the events that take place within the story. But after refreshing myself, I think I'm gonna start making more Black Clover what ifs, just like off this one, because like I remember everything clearly now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. God bless. Hope you guys have a good Christmas. If I don't make another what if before the end of the year, and I am gone. Thanks for watching.